What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This here's Legitical Response. And folks, I've got an update to the shadow campaign. Now, we know in 2022, there was a lot of funny business, a lot of impropriety going on in that election. Kari Lake should be the governor of Arizona right now, as a matter of fact. And we've got some evidence to prove this outright. Now, let's get into this right quick. I was going to keep on with the intro, but let's get into this because this is kind of a lengthy article here. Check it out. Federal court rules part of Arizona election manual is illegal. Yes, and they just changed these rules. Once again, in the 11th hour, right before the election, they are trying to disenfranchise voters. Democrats are doing this all across the country. All across the country. They did this in 2020, and they're doing it again, and it's quite insane. And they're finally being stopped. We finally have recognized that, hey, you can't do some of this. This is just nuts what they're trying to do. Like they understand they've lost the argument here. Trump is far better on the economy. It's far better on foreign policy than anything Democrats can come up with, right? Could they come up with a candidate that might be comparable to Trump, that might do just as good as far as in the view of Democrats? Sure. Kamala Harris is not that. We know this. Joe Biden is not that. We know this. Gavin Newsom is not that. We know this. Gretchen Whitmer is not that. We know this. We know this outright. I'm sure they've got somebody somewhere. Dean Phillips, as a matter of fact, who the Democrats themselves, Dean Phillips is a Democrat. Democrats sued to keep him off the ballot, making less democracy for you. I don't understand how Democrats can support Democrats. It's insane to me once you look at all these actions, but hang on. You might think, yeah, that sounds quite insane. But what happens, the corporate press and the mainstream news don't report on this at all. It's up to me. And then you've got two sides in America, right? You've got the informed and you've got the ill-informed who think they're informed. You've got a massive Dunning-Kruger effect in this country right now. That's the political division. It's not differences in ideologies. Sure, there's that. There is a little bit of that. But we can work something out, right? There's compromise. But you've got informed and uninformed, and that's the vast majority of political division in this country right now. Because you've got these people that think they know what's going on because they've been lied to by the corporate press and the mainstream news, and they're over here screeching, how can you support Donald Trump? Well, we've looked at the facts, and we've looked at both sides. And yet we're supporting Donald Trump. He's got his problems. Sure, say what you want about the man, but He has been far more effective than anything the Democrats have come up with. Anything. Like, most people regret voting for Joe Biden. That's a fact. Check it out, though. A federal judge late Friday blocked Secretary of State Adrian Fontes from refusing to include a county's vote in statewide totals if the local supervisors failed to certify the results, calling what he proposed utterly without precedent and comparing it to a nuclear weapon. That's what they're doing. They're trying to disenfranchise. Right? This is the argument from Democrats here. They're putting this rule in place and then saying we're not going to use it. Huh? What do you mean by that? What do you mean? Why are you making the rule then? Let's get into that. In an often strongly worded ruling, U.S. District Court Judge Michael Liberty, a nominee of former President Trump, acknowledged there has been at least one attempt in the past by a board of supervisors to delay certifications. This was in 2022. And that action threatened to hold up the formal canvass of all the votes through the entire state and even change outcome of some races. Like I said, in 2022, there was two majority Republican counties that they said there's impropriety going on. We got disenfranchisement of voters here. There was papers, there was 19-inch ballots printed on 20-inch paper, so the tabulator machines didn't record all those votes. You've got thousands of people that were disenfranchised from that election outright. Kari Lake lost by only a couple of thousand votes, and you've got far more votes that were just thrown out. So they refused to certify those votes from those counties outright. They didn't want to do it. They were threatened with criminal prosecution for not certifying those votes. I covered that story on this channel. It was one of my first videos. You can go back and look that up. It's one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Just outright. Just blows my mind. Kari Lake should be the governor of Arizona right now, and she's not. It's mind-blowing, y'all. Mind-blowing. But Liberty said the solution Fontes has incorporated in the elections procedure manual, allowing him to skip over those uncertified votes simply to finalize the state results, would unfairly and illegally disenfranchise the voters who had cast their ballots. It's insane. If the right to vote is the right of qualified voters within a state to cast their ballots and have them counted, then the canvass provision imposes the most severe burden state-sanctioned disenfranchisement, the judge wrote. Consider, Lamberti said, what would happen if Maricopa County supervisors balked. Under the rules Fontes enacted in the manual, he would be permitted to certify the state results without including those votes. And that, the judge said, would mean all 2.4 million votes from the residents would not count when the state finalized the results, meaning the results would be determined based on the votes only from the other 14 counties. This is what happened in 2022. What's worse, Liberty said, is that none of these would be the fault of the disenfranchised voters. A registered voter in Arizona may perfectly comply with all voting requirements and obligations, but nonetheless have her vote included based on mal or nonfeasance of the officials. He wrote, that's insane. That's just outright insane. So their votes wouldn't count even though they were all legal votes. They did everything right. But the person didn't want to certify because for whatever reason, right? Like, it's got to be a legitimate reason, too. It's got to be a legitimate reason why you won't certify. Once again, having thousands of 19-inch ballots printed on 20-inch paper to be put into a machine and they get not counted. That you're disenfranchising voters here, and they didn't want to certify that. They wanted to do another election in that county. And they were threatened with criminal prosecution if they didn't certify those votes, disenfranchising all those voters because those votes weren't counted outright. And Kari Lake has fought this in the courts. And she's won a lot. But where she's won wasn't quite enough to overturn it. But it's just insane. And she was turned down upon standing for the vast majority of this, saying that somebody from those counties needed to bring that lawsuit, not her. And she can't just go and get one of those people and add them to the lawsuit. It has to be them that brings the lawsuit and can't be funded. It's insane. It's just outright insane. They're showing evidence that could overturn an election for the governor, for crying out loud. That's not to mention that Katie Hobbs was the Secretary of State at the time, right? She oversaw the elections, certified all this garbage, right? Certified herself through impropriety to be the governor. That's insane. That right there should be disqualifying outright. She should have recused herself and made the Deputy Secretary of State or whoever in charge of this. It's just insane what happened, and I can't stress that enough. Nor was Liberty convinced by assurances from Fontes that the provision was meant largely to spur county supervisors to comply with the law and likely would never be enforced. A nuclear weapon does not become any less dangerous simply because a world leader avows never to unleash it, the judge said. And he said the same is true of claims by Fontes never to follow through, right? So once again, here we go with this idea that they're going to put this provision in there, this rule, and just not use it. Why are you putting that provision in there in the first place? Because of 2022, what happened? How about look at the evidence and see what happened? Right now you can see why this is insane to do. Because you disenfranchised thousands, possibly tens of thousands of voters here. And they didn't want to certify that. And you threaten these people with criminal prosecution, right? Felony criminal prosecution, at that. You would destroy these people's lives if they didn't certify disenfranchised votes, illegal votes. And that's what this would do. It would force them to just throw all these votes out if they didn't want to certify. That's insane. That is just outright insane what they're trying to do. And good on this judge. Good on this judge for seeing what this is and forcing them to capitulate that you can't do this. You can't just disenfranchise that many voters. The Democrats are very, very underhanded, y'all. And this is what they do. They change the procedure around elections to benefit themselves. Oh, well, you don't want to certify? Well, we just won't count your votes. How about that? So you have, say, a bunch of impropriety. Once again, you get somebody that has to physically go in and change the paper size, change the ballot size from 19-inch to 20-inch. That has to physically be done. Whether it was on purpose or not, I'll give the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't change a damn thing, by the way. You're disenfranchising, just throwing out tons of votes. Thousands upon thousands of votes. And you can't do that. These people are put there for a reason. Their certification process is there for a reason. Once again, it goes back to the story. I don't know if you guys have heard this story, but a man has a house somewhere, doesn't matter, lives by himself, builds a fence around his house to protect his family from wolves, right? They never get attacked by wolves because there's this fence. One day the wife starts yelling and complaining, tear the fence down, it's ugly. She doesn't like it, doesn't know why it's there, just says it's ugly. Tears the fence down. The next day the wolves come and kill the kids and the wife. Yes. That is what happens in this country. This is why tradition is so important. This is why our legal processes are so important to remain in place. You don't go changing the rules and changing the laws because, oh, well, this is just outdated. Yeah, it was put there for a reason. People don't just make up laws for no reason. Just no reason whatsoever. That's why we have laws. That's why we have traffic laws, stop signs, red lights, speed limits, for crying out loud. You might think, oh, well, that speed limit's too slow, so you break that law. And then one day, somebody pulls out in front of you because they didn't see you coming and you were going way too fast to stop, and you total your vehicle and possibly kill somebody. Yeah, they put that speed limit there for a reason, because you get complacent. Because that never happens. Who says it can't happen? Just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it won't. Right? Just because these people, the certification process seems like it's just a formality. Right? The certification process, oh, it just seems like a formality. Yeah, let's go ahead and do away with this because it's just a formality. No, it's not. It's there because if one of these election officials sees some impropriety going on once again, like we saw in 2022, they can say, hang on, I can't certify this in good conscience because I saw some underhanded crap going on. We need to investigate and get to the bottom of this to figure out what happened. All these votes weren't counted. We need to have another election. I can't certify that, and they're trying to force them to certify these votes. If not, then these votes just get thrown out. Who cares about that? Like, how can any Democrat support this? Right? Not just support it, but a Democrat Secretary of State devised this because of what happened in 2022. That's insane. How can they come to that conclusion? Let's logically break this down. How could they get to that conclusion? To force them just to throw out the votes if they don't want to certify. I don't understand that. I don't understand that whatsoever. How can anybody be looking in the interest of voters and say, oh, well, this one person who is in charge of elections says, oh, whatever happened, it don't even matter what happened, that he doesn't want to certify. we're just going to throw these votes out. That's insane to get to that conclusion. That let's just not count those votes then. Who cares? Just that entire county doesn't matter anymore. They don't get a say in the election. That's what they're telling you. That's what Democrats are all about, folks. And that's what I'm constantly talking about on this channel. It's just insane to me. Let's finish this story because I've ranted for a while. The canvass provision imposes a nuclear-level burden on voting rights, Liberty said. It is a weapon in the Secretary's arsenal that he has discretion to use should the circumstances present themselves. A weapon that does not become any less threatening simply because the Secretary is self-professedly committed to not pulling the trigger. Strictly speaking, Liberty's order does not void the provision of that manual. That will take a full-blown trial, but it does preclude Fontes from enforcing or relying on that provision this year. The challengers in the lawsuit, two groups with ties to Republican interests, also convinced Lombardi to bar Fontes from enforcing another provision dealing with what speech and actions are permitted in and around voting locations. That language would prohibit any activity by a person with the intent or effect of threatening, harassing, intimidating, or coercing voters inside or outside the 75-foot limit of a voting location. Lombardi said there's no problem in general with barring intentional threats, intimidating, or coercing. The issue, he said, turns on the fact it also covers actions that have the effect of doing so, regardless of the intent of the person. Then there's the fact, as written, the manual does not govern only actions inside the 75-foot perimeter in which certain activities are forbidden by statute, like campaigning or taking pictures, thus speech that a listener finds too loud, too invasive, I'm sorry, that little thing right there, I couldn't get rid of it, or too insolent, potentially anywhere in Arizona is prohibited, Lombardi wrote. But it has long been established that speech may not be prohibited because it concerns subjects offending our sensibilities. And then there's the fact that the prohibition is solely based on the reaction of the listener. Plaintiffs do not have fair notice of what speech is prohibited, Lombardi wrote. And then there's the fact that the provision actually could be enforced by a poll worker who would have the ability to have someone ejected from a polling place or even before they cast their own ballot. Moreover, the rule prohibits offensive or insulting speech without defining what categories of speech rise to the requisite level of offense or insult, he continued. Without any limitation, election officials and poll workers have nearly unfettered discretion in categorizing any regulation a voter's speech. And that, said Liberty, increases the likelihood the provision would be arbitrarily enforced. Wow. So, it looks like to me they're just wanting to give the ability of poll workers to just throw people out for talking. Right now, I understand. You don't want people coercing people to vote when they're standing in line. I get that. That's all illegal, by the way. It's already illegal. So why put in an additional provision to throw people out? It's an enforcement. I get that. I totally get that. But when you're not specific with language, it needs to be defined. It needs to be outright defined, and that's what this judge is saying about this provision. I totally get that. I get that. I get both sides of this one. But the other issue of just outright disenfranchising voters, I don't get that whatsoever. How the hell can he get to that conclusion? That blows my freaking mind. Just outright blows my mind. How can you come to that conclusion to just throw these votes out? It makes no sense to me. But once again, folks, we have a shadow campaign. We have Democrats in this country that don't care about procedure. They don't care about their constituents. It's just all mind-blowing. We have a shadow campaign, folks. Democrats love cheating to win. They know they've lost the argument, like I said before. It's just crazy to me, and we need people in places to point this stuff out and just shame these people into oblivion for trying to do so. It's just crazy to me. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all this. That's all I got for this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. Y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.